Tumia Bima Pap kwa kupiga nyota 150 nyota 51 alama ya reli au kwa WhatsApp namba 0764166066 na ujipatie bima ya dereva kipato.
Bima Pap, urahisi wa maisha.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Citizen Digital. It's another great episode. I am in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a special episode today. We are with Victoria Goro. Victoria Goro is the Academy Director for the MultiChoice Talent Factory in East Africa. Victoria, karibu to the Citizen Digital. Today is a special day. 20 creatives have graduated in filmmaking in different disciplines. Can you just give us a brief highlight how the journey has been for the past 12 months?
Thank you so much. It's been an eventful journey, I can tell you for a fact. I'm really arriving in Nairobi 19th of January, if I remember, this year. And really getting straight into the scheme of things in terms of what is required for this program. If you look at our program, it's a 12 months hands-on practical immersion program, in one in which the students really do get to work on a variety of film genres throughout the year. Really starting with some of the fundamentals of filmmaking, just making sure that every technical skill is grounded very significantly. A lot of time is spent there. So that takes us all the way to just about from January to about April. And beginning April, really, we're talking about them getting into actual production. So short film, short practice projects, working on different genres, TV commercials, public service announcements, all that moving us all the way to just about July, where they do a 4 weeks program with New York Film Academy. Now, the New York Film Academy program is for short format productions. One of the things that they were able to do this year under the New York Film Academy for the first time in the history of MTF is a music video project, one that featured a Kenyan, a really epic Kenyan artist who sings in a local language. So that takes them until about July, but after July now they get into the more serious long formats of the productions they are required to do in the calendar year. Okay. This year we're very lucky. We were commissioned by Z-World and we did a short film that is an adaptation from an African folktale. Okay. And then soon after that now the students do get into what is called the graduation project, which is a 1-hour feature film which they produce for the Mnet channels. Okay. So for the students of East Africa, they will produce a film that will screen on Maisha Magic Plus, Maisha Magic Bongo. The film will also screen on Showmax. Most importantly, it will also screen on Pearl Magic and Able TV in Ethiopia. So really a wonderful opportunity for the young people.
It is.
A year that allowed us to be able to push ourselves a bit more, especially when we got the Z-World commissioning, which wasn't part of our calendar. But we always adapt to every situation to enable us really to make sure that the young people do get an opportunity to really stretch their potential really to the fullest.
Okay, so this is the 4th cohort.
Yes.
But then for you, it is the 2nd cohort.
Yes.
Because you've been the Academy Director for 2 years now.
Yes.
Since it started up until today, that's almost hundreds of students from across the 4 East African countries. That is Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Ethiopia.
Yes.
Can you tell us how the program has evolved over the years? What have been some of the major changes as you try to hone to shape these young creatives?
Okay. I'll tell you one of the most critical issues for us in East Africa. If you remember, as East African communities, we are very, very passionate about storytelling.
Yes.
Our language, our art, the story of the African people, our resilience, our patience, the celebration of the African spirit is alive and well in East Africa. So one of the things that we have deliberately invested in, because of the wealth of stories that we have in the region, is actually storytelling, that the students actually do get a chance, each one of them gets a chance to write a story that they believe will resonate with the audiences here in East Africa, but also think about the globe. So a deliberate investment has been made in the area of building storytelling. The other deliberate investment we have done significantly is really looking at the new emerging areas in filmmaking. Yeah. So away from the normal technical areas, cinematography, sound, editing, lighting, we are now moving more and more into some of the skills that we do require to be able to make the workflow process for any production more significant in terms of making sure that all elements have been accounted for. So for the first time, we're now really focusing on really making sure we can build the capacity in production management, okay? Because that's a key role. The students really must be able to manage a production beginning to end, making sure that every single process of the workflow is followed. So production management is one area we have been able to invest a bit more. The other area that we've been able to invest more and more as we move into really significant production is the whole issue of script supervision. Initially it used to be called continuity, but it goes beyond continuity. It's really looking at how we're able to maintain all the elements in a film, in a scene, in a sequence, in an entire script that allows us to be able to follow through on all the important components, making sure that we do not have gaps that are going to disturb the audience in terms of being able to follow. Okay. Then the other thing that we've also done, we've introduced also, is really for, in many ways, in all our countries in East Africa, we're a bit short on people that write very critical film reviews or write film critiques. It's really, we're very few. And I think also, I think it's because there hasn't been a deliberate investment to be able to train people in that particular field. So one of the things that we are doing within East Africa is teaching students how to analyze and review film so that they actually can become film reviewers who actually can work for many of the mainline institutions in terms of the print, if you like, the print media, but also most importantly, people who are also able to really evaluate and review films from anywhere across the world. In a world where now the work opportunities, many of them are available online, we do think it's a skill set that we have given them that can actually accord them the first forms of work.
Okay, so the graduation, that is like the starting point. They've gone through the intensive training, what I believe must have been an intensive 12 months of training, but now they're getting into the real world now, where they have to put into practice what they've learned. Can you tell us, how do you prepare these young creatives who are now embarking into the industry? How do you prepare them for the reality of the world or the film industry in the specific countries in East Africa, in Africa as a whole?
Okay. So one of the things that we have deliberately included in our curriculum is we seek to make our young filmmakers independent producers. We are trying to make them employers. We're teaching them more and more how to run their own production enterprises. We are looking for them to be able to establish their own production houses. So one of the really critical things we've been able to invest in as we prepare them for the world is very deliberate training and grounding in the area of the business of film. So that they do look at film now from the point of view of not just a livelihood, but a profitable business that they can engage in and really be able to earn a livelihood, not just for themselves, but for the people that work with them, because filmmaking is a collaborative exercise. So we have spent a considerable part of the program working with the Henley Business School in South Africa to make sure that we can impart in our young people really the thirst for the knowledge, the experience, and the exposure that will allow them to get into independent production, so that they are able to look at the opportunities that are available throughout the different broadcast networks in the world, and use their production companies to be able to pitch for work, to be able to get the work, to be able to realize the different productions. So a deliberate investment really in really making sure that they have learned the business elements of film, how to run a successful business enterprise, and to make sure that it is one that is able, that is sustainable in the first place, but most importantly, one that is able to really produce the content that the different broadcast networks in East Africa are looking for, and of course in the world.
Okay. Yeah. So now, what do you think is the space for young creatives in Africa, in the filmmaking industry? Because we do understand there are veterans who are in the industry, but when MultiChoice came up with this program, they saw a need of having a more energetic generation of filmmakers, and now you want some of them to be film critics. What do you think is their place, is their space, is the opportunity for them to thrive within the industry? In reality, is the film industry in Africa encompassing, embracing for young creatives?
Let me put it this way. It is embracing for the young filmmakers that want to be embraced. So I think the mindset of the young filmmaker who is leaving, for instance, a program such as ours with really top-notch hands-on skills, a person who has a vast experience really gained through immersions on different production sets within East Africa. It's a person really in many ways goes beyond what we would consider the ordinary in filmmaking. So for the young filmmakers that really are looking for an opportunity where they can be able to not just showcase their skills, but most importantly, let everyone know that they are there, that they have these skills, they're able to deliver on these skills. That kind of young person definitely in this industry is not the kind of person who will be struggling for any sort of recognition or any sort of work opportunity that comes their way. Look at it this way. If you look at the population of Africa today, if you look at the investment that has been done, not just by the MultiChoice Group, if you look at many other broadcast networks within Africa and beyond, if you look at the film grants that we have in the region, East Africa has the highest number of film grants for emerging filmmakers. Yeah, there would be absolutely no reason why a filmmaker would pass on an opportunity like that. Let me give you an example. Just in the last year alone, the last 2022, we had 4 alumni in the MultiChoice Talent Factory get a 10,000 euro story writing grant from DW Academy. There was a Tanzanian, there was a Kenyan, there was a Ugandan. Okay, in fact, there were there was 1 Ugandan and 2 Tanzanians that got that grant. If you look at DocuBox, the East African Documentary Fund, a lot of our students from the class of 2020 are to be found there getting gainful work through grants that come through DocuBox. The opportunities are there in terms of them being able to put themselves in a state of preparedness to work with opportunities. Just recently, for instance, the Australian High Commission also put out a call to be able to support female creatives in East Africa. The countries were Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. So really, in terms of being able to marshal the opportunities that are available in the region, I do think the young East African filmmaker is definitely in a much better place than many other parts of Africa.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the importance now of Africa being able to tell its own story.
Yeah.
Because we've seen this narrative over and over again, and now there's a more awakening within the African continent where now we want to tell our own stories. In the film industry, where now you put to life what most people, the folklore, the stories that we've been hearing since time immemorial, and now we're able to get that visual aspect of it. What is the importance of Africans telling their own stories, even from a historical perspective, in today's world?
It's a really important aspect of anything that we want to describe as uniquely African. If you look at our African continent and every single community, if you look at every single part of Africa, we're very strong. Every African community is very strong in the area of language, in the area of art, in the area of their culture and how they preserve their culture. The only sad thing is that for most of our culture in Africa, a lot of it has remained undocumented. It has remained in many ways not reduced to a format where people in another 10 years will be able to access it. So if you look at many parts of Africa, we have in many instances what you would call dying cultures, okay? And it's really sad because when you lose out on your culture, you're losing out on your actual being. You're losing out on your actual self. In many ways, you are telling the world that you no longer exist. You no longer can be recognized for being uniquely African. Many stories have been told about Africa, but what are the typical stories that we see about Africa in the Western press? Stories of hunger, stories of war, stories of mercenaries, stories of plunder of natural resources. And it's really sad because it's a one-sided story. The truth is, Africa is beautiful. We have beautiful people, beautiful cultures, language, art, music, folklore that really is able to even follow the evolution of our different communities. The danger is if we do not document that, if we do not put it in a form that allows it to be able to share with the rest of the world to counter the negative images and stereotypes that are there about Africa, we have no one else to blame but ourselves.
Indeed. Now let's talk about some of the rewards that come with the academy, the training program. The 2023 cohort, a Tanzanian student won the top prize.
Yes.
You know, a scholarship to the New York Film School.
Yes.
Can you tell us what is the criteria for selecting one of the students to win? Because I think there are about 3 awards. Film scholarship to New York. There is one in Mumbai in South Africa as well.
Yes.
So the top prize, New York. What is the criteria for selecting one of the students
Yes.
as an award winner for that?
Okay. So this is an exercise that really essentially is overseen totally, beginning to end, by the facilitators of this program. The people that we call the faculty of the MultiChoice Talent Factory East Africa Academy, who are very respected industry professionals, people who have worked in industry, people who have award-winning status, people who also within they own their own independent production houses and have been able to put in place very significant training programs even within their own production houses. So the lecturers throughout the year have an assessment method where they are looking for students that have exceptional ability, but it's not purely academic. It's a student essentially who throughout the year has really been able to work extremely hard at their craft, actually gone beyond learning one craft, even gone to learn 2 or 3, has expended significant effort in improving their skill sets in that particular craft. The other thing they have done is they have been a good member of the team. Filmmaking is collaborative. So one of the things that you do want to see is the collaborative aspect as the students work. So this is the kind of person who collaborates with everyone, a person who has excellent team ethics and a person who has excellent work ethics, the kind of person who, in many regards, is the person who sleeps last. Everyone else maybe throughout the day is tired because they've been on set, but this person will even choose to work on something ahead of the others just to make the workflow easier. The kind of student who's very giving, they give of themselves to really improve the program, in the sense that where they see a gap, they are keen to make sure that that gap really has been sealed through their own personal effort and initiative. The kind of student who's very inquisitive and researches and wants to make sure that that research can be shared with others. The kind of student who, in many ways, even if you look at their own personal behavior, they're extremely polite. The student is extremely really accommodative of everyone. The kind of student who is extremely respectful, working with others without having for you to ever worry about them being able to work in a multicultural setting at any one particular time. And of course, a student really who's a top performer. The student really, if you look at their grades, if you look at our structure in terms of how we're able to look through their work throughout the year, this student has exceptional grades. The kind of student that leaves no stone untouched in terms of making sure that they deliver on every single task they have been assigned and more. So the lecturers throughout the year are evaluating this student throughout and are really taking key notes and really putting it together. At the end of the year, the faculty sits together and they now sit and go through their own scoring template, which has all the elements I've talked about, and then arrive really essentially at the winner. So we're very excited about Juif, the student from Tanzania who won this year, because he has been all that I have described. Amazing. And more, and an extremely respectful, extremely humble young man with excellent skill sets.
So as we wind up,
yes.
If you're to take stock of the year that has been,
yeah.
What would you remember most? And lastly, what is your hope for the African film industry?
What would I remember most about this class?
Yes.
They're some of the hardest working people that I know. I think you heard when we were inside the hall that they shot the 2 films in 12 days. So 6 days for one film, with I think a weekend in between, and then 6 days for the second film. Even in industry, that doesn't happen. Yeah. That's quite a bit of work. So hardworking people, the kind of young people that give up on sleep, students that have no problems with working long hours, students that have no problems with working in very difficult weather conditions. One of the films was shot at the height of the El Nino rains in Kenya. So these students would get off set, wait for the rain to stop, and then come back. Yeah. So students who are really people who are extremely resilient in making sure that they can, in many ways, work under any circumstances. I think for this particular class, they definitely were it. The other thing that I also would say about this class is they were extremely exposed in the sense that the programs that we had with the stakeholders that we were working with throughout the year, I was able to take them to quite a number of high-end and really high-placed film events. So in no time at all, they were already making their own networks, making their own contacts with people already who were in the industry. So the kind of young people that jump at the opportunity and actually make it count. I would definitely say that for this class. Is there a future for the African film industry? Absolutely. It's the reason why groups like the MultiChoice group have such a serious corporate shared initiative as MultiChoice Talent Factory. Really, if you think about us being really the global video entertainment company, the most watched in Africa, really the number of households that were to be found, if you look at the variety of content that we have, really the space and the avenue to be able to tell an African story is to be found in Africa. And I really think in many ways, groups like MultiChoice make that possible, that they become really clearly Africa's most inspired storyteller.
Oh, Victoria, thank you. That's it for today, and all the best for the 2024 cohort. You were with me, Mpoki Thompson, for the Citizen Digital. Until next time, bye-bye.
Kabla tujaanza safari, wengi tukikumbuka, tutahakikisha matairi upepo upo fresh. Tutahakikisha spana na jeki zipo na zinafanya kazi. Tutahakikisha breki zinakamata, taa za mbele, nyuma, indicator, hazard zinawaka. Hapo sawa. Wiper zinafanya kazi. Tutaangalia oili, engine na maji. Tutanunua bima na bima pap ili zisome na kusomeka. Kisha gari inaoshwa. Yote hayo ni utayari wa chombo chako na changamoto za safari. Ila so kwa ajili yako wewe dereva. Dereva, umechukua hatua gani kulinda uhakika wa kuendelea kujipatia hela? Si unajua ya barabarani hayatabiriki.
Tumia bima pap kwa kupiga *150 *51 alama ya reli au kwa WhatsApp namba 0764166066 na ujipatie bima ya dereva kipato.
Umahiri wa dereva hauishii tu kwenye kumudu usukani, bali pia umakini wa kulinda kipato chake wakati wa majanga ya kifedha.
Bima Pub, urahisi wa maisha.